Seth, thank you very much for joining us today. We, the whole team at IDPartner, are really excited to have you. Um, you're helping us to bring a new way of dealing with ID to a much bigger audience, and I'm just so excited you're here. Maybe you could walk us through what you see in terms of the challenges for identity in the entertainment industry, and help guide us.
Awesome. Yeah. And it's great to be here, Rod. I love working with you and your team and Trish and everyone, Brennan, on the team as well. So it's a great experience, and it's a new step for me. And if I can just start a little bit with maybe a little bit of an anecdote, because it's entertainment and music industries had these like, pretty spectacular events in the last 6 months. Probably one of the bigger ones being this meltdown around ticketing that everyone in the country seemed to pay attention to and kind of ignored some of the industry landscape behind it. And lots of talk about pretty negative and destructive things going on. And I think we found our childhood through that. So I'm thankful, and hopefully we'll have some really great constructive things to talk about. But yeah, I'm a digital business person. Run a consultancy. It's called Strat Americas, and do a lot of work with driving partnerships in both North and South America as well. And I've got a background, generally working in business development with new platforms. I spent over a decade with something that became Sony Music. I always joke it was during like the wrong decade when the house was burning down before digital became an actual business. So I had a front row seat both to the test flights as well as the actual launches of things from Apple to Spotify, and sometimes look at it now a little bit longingly, like, hey, I really chose a different decade. But I had been doing a lot of work in the music sector, and have worked broadly in digital media. And I'm really glad we found each other, because I think there's some actual quite real problems out there these days that are coming along with this newest generation of Web3 and 3D and VR and everything that's out there. And so I think there's a lot we can talk about in the space, particularly with this technology.
Seth, can you tell us something specifically around the what AI, how AI might help or hinder the efforts in the entertainment industry?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag basically, and unfortunately the press and the media tend to focus on the negative stuff, or the stuff that's disruptive, and there's certainly some disruptive things that have been happening in the last, I don't know, 6 months or so. But you know, AI has quietly been a part of the media and entertainment industry, certainly on a production level for years now. So there's a lot of cool things that a producer or an engineer can do, whether it's with audio or just tailoring the consumer and user experience. Basically, one of the biggest challenges that I think I and the market are seeing right now is around this area of ticketing. And so we obviously saw it with some of the meltdowns with Ticketmaster, but it is this idea of overwhelming demand for major concert tours and major events. And we saw it, very explicitly with Taylor Swift, who put, I think it was 50 shows on sale in just in one fell swoop. Probably should have staggered it. But there's a big challenge if you're running a ticketing entity like Ticketmaster is, to verify these fans. And I think there's been a number of challenges that have come along when these events or tours are announced, just around the area of verifying who's an actual person and who's actually buying tickets. So a lot of bots are coming in, a lot of fake accounts, and then folks that aren't even registered for some of the pre-sale activities, which is kicking off all this demand. And so what's interesting here is that we actually have a way around that, which is this bank-based identity verification process, which can be quick and can be easy, and hopefully can actually speed the process for these ticket pre-sales and alleviate a lot of the fan dissatisfaction and overwhelming numbers that the ticketing service is managing. So it's a really great solution for it, in my view.
That's right. And so, Seth, thank you, because obviously that's what we believe in. And Rod, maybe you can explain, because there are loads of options right now, and there are loads of solutions out in the market. Why are they falling short, and what can we do better than they can today?
Proving your identity is a weird thing, especially online. How do I know it's really you? A lot of places ask you to do things like scan your driver's license, but even that with AI can start to be faked. So, how about we flip the question? Rather than asking a business to figure out who you are, why not show up and say, look, I can prove that I am who I am. How do I do it? Ask my bank. I've been working with them for years. I had to go into their branch to open my account. They know me. They watch how I earn my money. They watch how I spend my money. They have my mortgage. They know me as a real person. And what this does is it changes the way that identity works. No longer is it something where you're spreading your identity information all over the place and sharing ever more information. Instead, it's something you own. And we know it's something you own because people say things like, identity got stolen. It's property. So, how do you exercise your property rights? Well, you put your identity in an institution you trust, and then you have them vouch for you. And so, for confirming that you are who you claim to be when you're buying tickets, that's easy. You go to the site, and instead of scanning your driver's license or sharing all this private information, you click the button that says verify with whatever bank you're working with. And the bank gives you a little opportunity to say, yep, that's me. They also help you to make sure that it's really the ticketing site you expect you're dealing with, so you know you're not getting scammed. And then the bank sends a message back saying it's you. That's it. It's really simple. And it means that we can then start to trust each other. And artists can start to get paid fair rates, and people don't have to overpay for tickets. And that level of trust can exhibit itself everywhere.
If I can add a little bit to that, completely agree. I mean, one of the biggest problems has been this issue of bots. So there's actually a law in the United States that was passed around 6 years ago that gives the government actually the legal right to clamp down on bots. It hasn't exactly been put into action, and so what you've seen in a pretty uncontrolled way is just an enormous amount of bot activity buying up tickets when it comes to this specific use case that Rod's mentioning. And I think the numbers that Live Nation actually, for example, publicly put out were in the billions for this pre-sale that we're talking about for the Taylor Swift tour. So it's actually an
Wow.
enormous issue, and I think this is one good way to really fight back and clamp down and push back on that bot experience. It'll improve the customer experience for everyone, and the economics I think will probably be positively affected as well because it's a great step forward if you're trying to service this demand.
I think it also changes the relationship between the artist and their fans because they know that their bank ID verified fans, bank based ID verified fans, are really real people. That means that if they want to give those real people special opportunities because they are a long-standing fan, that's great. They're not being disintermediated by scalpers who sit in the middle and separate them from their fans. I think it's a great opportunity for everybody. Um, and what's that all come down to? A really simple thing: being able to trust each other. That's the whole hope of our goal.
That's right. And I think it can even go further than just the interaction at the time of purchasing tickets, right? It really allows the artist, the content creator to develop relationships with those very unique human beings, right? That they know who they
Yep.
are and now they can communicate in a trusted way, right?
I would also add in entertainment, some of these relationships that we're kicking around are actually quite new. I mean, I worked at a big rights holder, Sony Music, and they and their competitors, I think, traditionally weren't actually directly involved with consumers. Most of our stuff would be sold or licensed through intermediaries or record stores, whatever it might be, that held all the customer relationships. And so, these new channels, whether they're through artists and directly to fans or labels or even just streaming services and studio back services, I think they present a lot of new challenges for rights holders, this whole area of direct to commerce, direct to consumer, if you will. And this is a very, very helpful tool and step in managing that I think you're just starting to see some of these big mixed steps because of the demand that's out there. So it should be very positive and incremental for the entire ecosystem, not just around music and artists.
Yeah,
And
as soon as you know who you can trust and who you can work with, the opportunities are enormous. When you know that the other side is genuinely who they claim to be, That trust means you can build interesting things together. And whether that's entertainment or commerce, it doesn't matter. It's all the same thing.
In Seth, let me ask you kind of a related question, because when you talk about art, it's, I think, equally important that you know who you're dealing with and interacting with, and also to be able to verify that the content that maybe I'm acquiring, right? Maybe it's not a ticket to a show, but it's actually a piece of art or it's a piece of music, that it's really coming from
Sure.
whom I think it's coming from. How do you see the solution that we're discussing work together with maybe other solutions that may focus on content um, origination verification? I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
no, it's a great sure. No, it's a great question. There it should go hand in hand with the idea of verified property that you're buying, or an authentic file, if you will. I mean, I think a lot of the digital commerce ecosystem or digital content ecosystem has moved towards streaming, the idea of renting or leasing your content, whereas there are still actually legacy businesses of buying to own. You can still buy things from your smart TV, and I think throughout all of these iterations, fraud, whether it's fake streams, fake downloads, um, things that didn't come from their rightful owner, have always been a legitimate issue, basically. Watermarks being maybe one example of a way to identify it, as you're describing, digital rights management, perhaps. And I think this is something that could come along kind of as a unified incremental solution to it for sure. It's not the only thing, and but I think it works equally well with maybe traditional streaming or things like in-app purchases. Some of the big social gaming networks and events that have such giant audiences where people are buying incremental pieces of content. And I think even push the point out a little bit further, the whole idea of Web3, blockchain distribution. It all rides along hand in hand with it, to me, basically, this idea that Rod's driving at about identity and proving that. So it's kind of all good and all incremental.
Well,
Yeah, it's interesting. A transaction has multiple components. You have to prove control over the property, but you also have to prove who you're transferring it to. And if you can prove both of those things, then all sorts of things become possible. It allows you artists to do things like distribute content in a way that their audience can interact with or co-create with, in ways where they know that it's okay because they've designated this person the authority to do X, Y, or Z. Like, I don't know, sing along.
Yeah.
And any of those things are fun. They're interesting. They're creative, very powerful. But you need to do the transaction. You both need to be able to define the property and define who it's being transferred to.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think
It's
that
interesting. There's a oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was just going to say that it even goes beyond identity. It's really about trust, right? Which, Rod, is something that you've mentioned a
Yeah.
couple of times, right? It's really trust. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Seth. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think this issue goes certainly this new wave of AI driven creation, which right now, at least in entertainment, it's usually rights and rights holders that kind of define some of the branches of the tree or the playground that you're playing in terms of the content ecosystem, and who and from where you purchase from, who has those rights. And I think it's been relatively clear over the last 5 or 6 years. I think this new wave of AI technology, where one is able to train content, if you will, outside of the rights ecosystem, and that coupled with that, there's no real copyright right now in terms of AI created works, throws a lot of really curious things in the landscape right now. So I mean, I think this technology, as well as others, probably go hand in hand with the idea of bringing some order into the landscape. Verification seems like something that would be a good thing to have pretty much in all corners of these new platforms when you're transacting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be fun. Where what people will once once we've built the infrastructure for people to understand who owns the property and who it's being transferred to and who has access to what, the things that people will create is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to being able to go to an Apple, the original Apple Beatles site, being able to get the Beatles AI bot to write a happy birthday song for my daughter, and be able to buy the rights for it, and enjoy that and share it with my family, knowing that I've paid my fair share, that they're getting paid for their work, and that everything is being dealt with, but it's also joyous and fun.
That's yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely agree. Do you mind if, Seth, I put you on the spot with one last question, maybe? Because
Go ahead.
we're welcoming you to our advisory board, and I know that you have many ideas that then you've already started to work with us and to help us. But what is the, I don't know, the thing that excites you the most about working with us and our potential and the future, but also the thing that maybe concerns you the most, and how maybe you think we could approach.
Um,
Not
well, you are
proprietary.
putting me on the spot. That's a good question. I mean, look, I mean, I think maybe on the obvious side of the stuff that's exciting is that I think there's we're already drawing out a lot of new opportunities, whether it's in ticketing or social gaming or other types of networks, if you will, that could use this type of help with verification as they whether allow people to subscribe or pay to. So driving
And
some new roads into that is very exciting to me.
Seth, let me just say that as a mom of a young girl, to me, the piece about social gaming it particularly touches my heart, right? Because the importance of keeping kids safe while allowing them to
Sure.
explore and go out and learn is super key. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
It's really
Definitely,
important.
no, it's incredibly important, and you've probably seen Roblox or just some of the other things that are out there, like Instagram, where I think things like moderation are really important. But that's really exciting. I mean, the stuff that is, I think, a challenge is that, you know, my initial focus has been around ticketing and events, and you know, in the United States, you don't need much background to understand who the players are in that space, and so these are rather established entities that I think there's a lot of complexity around not only their organizations, how they do business, and their technology. So we want to make sure we get business done. We're business with all, but we want to make sure we're tackling the big gorillas and big elephants, and that's the challenge right there. And particularly in the U.S., there's a couple of biggies in the landscape, and then there's some others that aren't as big. So we want to make sure we're covering all the bases, basically. And as a consultant, Rod knows this, and Brennan, who I work with, I need to show results as well, and not just be some corporate dude writing decks and telling them what to do. So that's always a concern for me and anyone else out
I think,
there.
yeah, but I have no doubt we're going to build some interesting and fun things together, and that'll be the best part.